Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Friday. Only a couple of days away from the Royal Rumble on Sunday. Very exciting time in the week of pro wrestling, and therefore, as always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's get straight into today's stories, and let's start off with the Wednesday Night War ratings. Yes, I know people are going to say, oh, don't start off with the ratings. Stop talking about ratings. Ratings don't matter in 2021. There's so many different things. You've got WWE Network moving to Peacock. It proves that ratings don't matter, blah, 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 blah. Yes, I know ratings aren't as important in the year 2021 as they were in the year of 1999, but they still do have an aspect on the world and landscape of pro wrestling. People still do pay attention to them for a good reason, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the AEW Dynamite seeing a big drop in viewership this week, whereas NXT saw their viewership rise this week, certainly very, very good for them. Now, Wednesday's edition of Dynamite drew 734,000 live viewers on TNT, which is down 14% from last week, which just about defeated the 720,000 live viewers, which is up 9.3%, drawn in by WWE NXT on the USA Network. So they only defeated NXT in terms of viewership by 1.9%. This is according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. Now, AEW ranked number 6 in the cable top 150 for the 18 to 49 key demographic, while NXT ranked, as usual, far below that in 24. Now, AEW ranked as 64 in total viewership, whereas NXT ranked not that far off in 67 in total viewership. Now, last week's episode of Dynamite drew 854,000 live viewers and ranked number 33 in the cable top 150 and 64 in viewership, whereas last week's NXT drew 659,000 live viewers and ranked number 67 in the cable top 150 and 73 in viewership. Now, AEW drew a 0.29 rating, which is down nearly 20% from last week in the key 18 to 49 demographic, topping the 0.21, which is up nearly 40%. Garnered by NXT in the same demo this week. So they still defeated them significantly, of course, but AEW was significantly down, NXT was significantly up in the key metrics, which is certainly something worth discussing. Now, this week's edition of AEW Dynamite is AEW's lowest audience and 18 to 49 demographic since the Thanksgiving episode, which drew 710,000 live viewers with a 0.26 rating, with the exception of the January 6th show, which of course was affected by the US Capitol riots in Washington, D.C. Now, this was NXT, in contrast, their best viewership since the December 16 episode, which drew 766,000 live viewers with a 0.19 rating, their best 18 to 49 demo rating since the October 28 show, which drew 876,000 live viewers with a 0.25 rating. I know lots and lots of numbers there. But in terms of the bigger picture here, AEW's viewership was down 11.4% from the same week in 2020, whereas in a stark contrast to the majority of just television, but especially pro wrestling television in general, NXT viewership was actually up 1.2% from the same week in 2020. Now, do you really rave about the show being up 1.2% year on year? You'd have to look at it as a victory for NXT. You have to look at it as a victory because, frankly, every other TV show, whether it is Raw, SmackDown, even Dynamite, they're down year on year, and that's the case for every year. So you can take, when you're up from the previous year, you take it. So it was surprising. It really was surprising because, to be honest, if I was going to, put the shows side by side in terms of quality, I think it's no doubt that AEW was the better show this week. I mean, by far it was the better show this week. I thought it was much more watchable. I thought the pacing was good. Now, I don't think it was live this week as far as I'm aware. I think it was taped. Maybe that has a factor into it. I don't know if it does. I think AEW Dynamite spoilers aren't as readily available as other spoilers would be historically. I don't know if that played into it. I don't know if there were some issues when it comes to the TNT streaming app. That was some issues at the start of the show. I don't know if that plays into it. I don't even know if that plays into the ratings in general. As far as I'm aware, when Nielsen does its metrics, they only calculate televisions, people watching live on TV at the time. Now, obviously, things evolve over time, and things with modern technology, streaming services, maybe they do incorporate those. I don't know. I know they don't incorporate DVR or on demand. Live streaming, that might be different. I don't know. We'll have to double check on that. But certainly, despite NXT losing once again. I mean, they lose every week in both metrics most of the time. Occasionally they'll beat AEW in terms of the overall viewership, but in terms of the key demographic, which is what television networks and advertisers truly care about, AEW is always coming out on top there, and they did this week. You can't overlook that AEW, if you want to count winning, they won again this week. So it's not a sign for AEW to panic by any stretch of the imagination, but if it's WWE and the officials there at NXT, whether it's Triple H or Shawn Michaels or whoever, they have to look at the episode they did on Wednesday and go, you know what, whilst it might not have been critically acclaimed, obviously it worked. And they have to look into why, because I mentioned this before, and it was really apparent in the sort of second 6 months of 2020. I had really felt that NXT had given up. And not in terms of giving a bad product or anything like that. I just felt like they'd given up trying to compete. When the Wednesday Night Wars first started, it was... Look, AEW was always winning that fight, and they always should win that fight. You know, you look at the people that AEW have available to them. You look at the people that AEW have on their roster. You look at the stars that AEW have on their roster. They have Chris Jericho, they have Jon Moxley, they have Kenny Omega, they have Cody Rhodes. These are some incredibly big stars on their roster. Of course, they should be beating NXT every single week. They should be beating NXT in the viewership. They should be beating NXT in the key demographic. I know they're a new brand and they're new in the time slot and all that kind of stuff, but they should. Look at the star power they have. If any of those AEW stars re-signed with WWE, if Chris Jericho, if Cody Rhodes, if Jon Moxley re-signed with WWE, do you think they would be in NXT? Of course not. They'd be on Raw or SmackDown because they're big stars, they're big draws. They should be beating NXT every single week. So that's my opinion on it. But look, if NXT, they've got to look at the ratings this week. They've got to look at the quarter hours and look, see what was right, because something went right here. You know, the ratings, and they don't lie. They can be manipulated, but they don't lie. So NXT, WWE must have to, you know, look at this and say, look, the viewership's up, the demo's up. We're doing something right. Let's figure out what it is, and let's continue with it, because something's going right, something's working. So we've got to continue with that, absolutely. So let's move on and let's talk about something that certainly is getting a lot of people talking, and that's this idea of modern day pro wrestlers being soft. Now, this was something that was raised by the Undertaker when he was on the Joe Rogan Experience. This was something that was sort of brought up then about him missing the old school dressing rooms and him missing the old school way of pro wrestling, and the men they carried, was it guns and knives in the dressing room, and he doesn't like how people play video games nowadays. To be honest, going back to that, the Undertaker's original comments, people got upset about them, and I think rightfully so. But that isn't anything new. It isn't anything new. We've heard this all the time. We have heard this all the time. And Bill Goldberg is the latest person to agree with The Undertaker. Now, WWE Hall of Famer Bill Goldberg is in agreement with The Undertaker's recent take that the younger crop of wrestlers lack an edge to them, and the current WWE product is, quote, soft. Now, that's not soft in the way that Enzo Amore and Big Cass would say. That's not S-A-W-F-T, soft. That's legitimately how you spell soft. Now, while speaking on the latest episode of After the Bow of Corey Graves, Goldberg delved into how the locker room has changed and, quote, not for the better in 2021. He said, quote, I don't think things could go like they did back in the day in the current day, said Goldberg, before responding to Graves about The Undertaker's recent criticism. He said, when you hear the comments about me coming back and doing 1 or 2 matches a year, how people are like, he doesn't deserve it, he never paid his dues, he was never on the road, and these people are on the road. Hey man, people forget very quickly what all of us did back in the day and earned the spot where we are in right now. I am one of the luckiest guys in the world. He then added, but yes, I believe comparatively the business is soft, but the business is in 2021, so things have to change and things have to be different. Goldberg then went on to ask younger talents to grow a thicker skin and accept criticism. He said, quote, like I said, times are quite different than they were back in today, but people are soft. People can take offense to things way too quickly. Get a little thicker skin, boys and girls. That's all I can say. When Legends came in, when I was in the business in the beginning, I was greatly appreciative of the eyes they brought to our product. And one day those young kids are going to be just like me and hope karma doesn't come back to bite them in the ass. That's all I can say, because at 54 years old, I don't know one of them that could be doing what I do. Now, those are big words. Those are very, very big words. There is so much to break down about what Goldberg said there, because I really don't agree with the majority of it. Now, before I get into the criticisms of it, because there are tons of how to critique that, I think the first thing I will say is this notion that the generation before them was soft, or the generation before them, they don't know how good, or people nowadays don't know how good they've got it, kind of thing. That isn't limited to pro wrestling. I think we should just emphasize that. That is fundamentally how humans perceive things, right? Everyone does it. Everyone does it when they say, kids nowadays, or the people, back in my generation, we had things tougher. I'm more tougher than the current generation. They say that about life. I'm sure people older than me will say, you don't know how lucky you've had it growing up in today's modern age. I say it about people that are currently, small in that school. They go, they're growing up with iPads and all that kind of stuff. When I was younger, I was lucky if I had a cell phone and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And then if I say that someone older than me, they'll go, lucky you grew up with a cell phone. What, are you crazy? That is just a modern way. That is not even a modern way. That is just the way people perceive human beings through generation to generation. You don't know how good you've got it. That isn't limited to pro wrestling. I think that's worth emphasizing first. Now, in terms of Goldberg's comments, because there is so much to break down there, I think his notion that people nowadays in the pro wrestling business need to grow a thicker skin and accept criticism, he's responding angrily to criticism. Does he not understand the hypocrisy of what he is saying there? This is the guy that blocks more people in 5 seconds than I think anyone else in pro wrestling. If you say one bad thing about Goldberg, block. If you do any form of criticism that he has 3 matches, he has 2 moves, and he squashed young talent ever since he's come back and stifled their career, frankly. Yet, if you bring that up, and if social media brings it up, straight away, criticism, you don't know, blah, 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 you don't know what you're talking about, I don't listen to haters, blocks about, and he gets angry. This is a guy that he has the thinnest skin in the world. I mean, Frank, he really does. That was part of his problems in WCW. Listen to shoot interviews with Kevin Nash or Scott Hall or anyone in WCW. They would say this guy treated everything like a shoot. Isn't a bad thing, but in terms of criticism, they called him a mark. They said the guy was the biggest mark in the world, and any form of criticism, any form of beef, he took it very, very seriously. And what happened? He would get into confrontations, he would get into arguments. This is a guy also in WCW, when Goldberg's on the rise, who wants to work with him, Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho didn't want to beat Goldberg. Chris Jericho didn't want to pin Goldberg. Chris Jericho just wanted to work with Goldberg, get squashed. Goldberg quashes it. Why does he quash that potential rivalry that could have drawn money? Because Chris Jericho was embarrassing him on TV. He was saying bad things about him on TV. Grow a thicker skin, Bill. Grow a thicker skin. Take your own advice. So I don't think, going back to what The Undertaker said, I'm not even sure if The Undertaker truly said that the younger wrestlers, were soft or anything like that. He said they lack an edge to them. I don't know if he necessarily meant that, personally, by their personalities. He might have just meant the product. At the time, he was describing the product as soft, not the human beings, not the pro wrestlers. I think if he was implying that today's pro wrestlers were soft, he was saying it's because the WWE forced them to be that way. They can only act and talk and walk in a certain way that WWE directs them to. I don't think that's anyone of the today current crop in WWE roster. I don't think that's their fault, and I don't think The Undertaker, frankly, was implying that was the case. So Goldberg's just veered off in a different direction here. And again, I find it hilarious. This is a guy telling people to grow a thicker skin. The guy has the thinnest skin around. It's insane. All of the criticisms towards Goldberg are perfectly justified. Perfectly justified. He said, I agree with The Undertaker. Well, you didn't agree with him. He nearly dropped him on his head, nearly broke his neck in Saudi Arabia in a match that never should have happened in the first place because it was 10 years too late. But again, if you criticize him in that match, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what I'm talking about. Matt Riddle certainly has made a career of criticizing Goldberg, and he doesn't like it. Grow a thicker skin, Bill. Grow a thicker skin. So it's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And look, I don't think anyone will say that Goldberg doesn't deserve to be in the position that he's in. Of course he's a big name. Of course he's, paid his dues. He was one of the biggest success stories of the Monday Night Wars. He came out of nowhere and had a meteoric rise. The problem is, what did you do after the streak? Not a lot. But he is still a big name. I don't think anyone's saying that, Bill Goldberg doesn't deserve to be in the spotlight or anything like that. People's complaints about him is that he comes back and squashes younger talent. He beats people in 3 minutes. Then he disappears. What does that do for the modern day? In another interview, it might have even been in the same interview, he said it was really difficult to build stars in 2021. Yeah, it is when you come back and beat him in 3 minutes. How do you recover from that? So I've just, rightfully so, the same people on social media that are criticising Goldberg criticised this interview and said, what a load of, horse you-know-what. But we also had a response by Mick Foley, who basically disagreed with what Goldberg and just this general consensus of what people are saying, because WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley has chimed in on the Undertaker and Goldberg's recent opinions about modern-day pro wrestlers being soft and the locker room drastically changing in recent years. Now, Mick Foley tweeted, quote, "Today's professional wrestlers are every bit as tough as the wrestlers of my era were, just my opinion." And he's right. It's like I said before. This isn't limited to pro wrestling, because it isn't. It's not limited to pro wrestling. Everyone throughout the history of time, in the annals of time, in human existence, will always say they had it tougher than the people today. They always do. I've done it. I'm sure you've done it as well. You'll say, these kids today, they don't even know how good they've got it. Growing up with their modern technology and all this kind of stuff when I was growing up, or I used to go out and play when I was younger. Now people are just staying inside, all this kind of stuff. People always want to criticize the modern generation. They always do. Why? I don't know. I don't know if it's some weird human nature feeling of acting, superiority. I don't know. But that's what humans do. And that's what they've always continued to do. Now, some interesting news when it comes to Triple H, because Triple H has spoken about if he would be interested in taking control eventually one day, I guess after Vince McMahon's era is over. Now, this was during an interview on the Michael Kay show, where he talked with Michael Kay, Don LaGreca, and Peter Rosenberg about the current state of WWE, all things WWE, and he was asked if he ever envisions himself taking control of all the WWE one day. Now, Triple H admitted that it doesn't matter to him who's heading everything. The only thing that matters to him is that WWE continues to grow and succeed. He said, quote, "Look, for me, all of this comes down to the success of WWE. I never started this on any standpoint when I got into it. I just wanted to do it because I thought it was the greatest form of entertainment in the world, and you just want to be great at it and whatever comes along with it. As my career would wind down, I realized I was just fascinated with the behind the scenes of it. It's irrelevant to me who is steering the ship or who is doing what. There's plenty of work for everybody here. For me, it's all about ensuring that, like the tagline says, then, now, forever. The brand of entertainment that I personally consider the greatest blended form of entertainment in the world, I hope that it continues. So to me, it's irrelevant to any of it. It's as long as it continues." So Triple H being very political. He's hardly going to come out, right? He's hardly going to come out and say, yes, I can't wait till Vince McMahon croaks. I want to take the WWE. I want to control it. I want to take it to the next level. I want to take it in a different direction. It's terrible. I can't wait for the day I take it over. Now, as far as who takes it over, I think at this point, it's probably as murky as ever. I think, frankly, throughout the sort of late 90s and the early 2000s, I think the viewpoint would have been if Vince McMahon were to ever depart or anything, heaven forbid, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but anything would happen to Vince McMahon, it would probably be Shane McMahon that takes over. He would be groomed as the heir apparent in the same way that Vince McMahon would buy out his father in the late or the early 80s, rather. That would be the way that it happened, right? And then obviously Shane McMahon left the company, and then you saw the rise of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon as corporate entities, and they worked their way up to the top of the company, on camera, obviously off camera too, in the corporate world of things, and it was kind of thought that, okay, heaven forbid, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but anything happens to Vince McMahon, it would probably go to Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. They're ingrained in the company. You'd heard all of those reports over the years of Vince McMahon grooming Triple H, making him more corporate. That's why he shaved his head. That's why he started touching all of these different departments in the company. The success of NXT was kind of a not only a good thing for the WWE in terms of planning and developmental, but also a way to prove to potential investors and current investors that one day when Vince McMahon goes, it's in good hands with someone like Triple H. He's not this carny wrestler. He's actually a good businessman too, because, you know, don't get me started on Wall Street, but you know what I mean. People will worry. People will worry. The day Vince McMahon disappears, people will be very worried about WWE. So the feeling was for a while that it would be Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Stephanie would be more on the corporate side of things. Triple H would be handling the product side of things. Now Shane McMahon's back in the fold. Now, is Shane McMahon a stockholder in WWE anymore? As far as I'm aware, no. But the day he started to appear on TV again, he started to get back into the fold. Look, at the end of the day, he's Vince McMahon's son. He is Vince McMahon's son. And over the course of the last 4 or 5 years where Shane McMahon's been back in the fold, we've heard those reports and rumours. Well, you know, Shane McMahon's doing a bit of producing. Shane McMahon's sitting next to his dad backstage. He's sitting in on some production meetings. And look, things happen. Things happen. So right now, who takes over? I think the general response is right now, it's not one person that would take over. It's not going to be like a Vince McMahon. They always say that there will be no other person like a Vince McMahon that has the final say on everything. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Design by committee is never a good thing. You always need one person at the end of the day say yes or no. But I think it might be an amalgamation of, you know, Triple H might handle the product side of things, but Stephanie McMahon might handle the brand side of things. I think she does a good job in that. Certainly better than she did in creative. Shane McMahon, would Shane McMahon be involved? I don't know. But I think Triple H is lying if he says he doesn't want to take over WWE one day. The guy is a political animal. Look at his career. I think he does a good job in NXT. Could he expand that on a wider scale if it was with WWE? I don't think so. I don't think so. But it's certainly an interesting topic that I know a lot of people want to talk about, but hopefully it's something we don't need to address in a very long time. And finally, Kurt Angle. Yes, we have an announcement when it comes to Kurt Angle because he has announced his new podcast. Now, before we get into the actual news of this, I will say this freaked me out because I was watching... I was on YouTube yesterday, just, you know, when you just flick around, you go down one of those YouTube rabbit holes, and I saw a clip from Kurt Angle talking to Steve Austin on his Broken Skull sessions. So I thought, I'm going to watch that again, and I was watching it again, and I was thinking at the time, man, Kurt Angle, he is really good in a shoot interview. He doesn't do loads of them. He's done a few podcast appearances, maybe 1 or 2 shoot interviews every year, but he doesn't really do them because he hasn't really had to. And I was thinking, man, this guy's got so many stories from his time in the Olympics, from WWE to, you know, problems of addiction. Obviously, he was in TNA, Impact Wrestling, for 10 years. He was also IWGP Heavyweight Champion. He's got some New Japan stories as well. And then, obviously, this latest run with WWE. I thought, man, this guy has so many stories. This is great. Well, later on in the day, it's announced that WWE Hall of Famer Kurt Angle has launched his podcast. So, I mean, talk about the universe trying to tell you something. Now, Kurt Angle is partnering with Conrad Thompson, the podfather himself, to launch the Kurt Angle Show on Sunday, February 7. Now, Angle spoke with Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated and said the podcast will cover everything from his legendary pro wrestling career to his battles with addiction. Angle said he will be holding nothing back, and that is true. Angle is a very, you know, I guess I know he's a wrestler, but he is a very straight shooter, if you pardon the pun there. He really is. He doesn't care about offending people. He doesn't care about holding back. He'll tell the truth. He'll talk about the likes of Chris Benoit. He doesn't censor himself or anything like that. It's very refreshing to listen to. Now, Angle said, quote, "We're going to have a lot of fun with this podcast and get into some great wrestling stories. It's true that I have a lot of stories to tell, and I won't be holding back." Now, a new episode of The Kurt Angle Show will drop every Sunday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time via Thompson's adfreeshows.com platform. Subscribers can access the first episode now, which includes video. The show will be presented by Westwood One and will be available on Apple, Spotify, and all major podcast providers. He said, quote, "People are going to be surprised by the stories they've never heard before. Plus, we'll have interviews with some amazing people, and this is the first time I'll be asking the questions. I've never done that before, being the interviewer instead of being the interviewee, so it's going to be very interesting. And for me, this is the best way to get my message out. I want to share my story. I want to be able to talk about those who influenced me, my brothers and sisters in pro wrestling. I hope my story carries through so people can have the courage to keep fighting." So I'm really excited for this. I think Conrad does a fantastic job of all of his podcasts. I think the guy is just an incredible worker. I mean, the guy, he must never sleep. I mean, he does all of these podcasts, plus run his own mortgage company. It's amazing, and the shows are really good. They are really, really good. So I'm really excited about Kurt Angle. I think it's a part of the pro wrestling universe they haven't touched before over there at Ad Free Shows. I think Obviously, you can talk about the WWE stories. They're well documented. For me, though, what I'm really excited about when it comes to this Kurt Angle stuff is getting into the Olympic stuff. We haven't really heard all of those stories before when it comes to, Foxcatcher and all that. That's going to be fascinating. Talking about Kurt Angle and Impact. What they don't have on ad-free shows, they touch about it briefly when it comes to Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff because they were there. But Kurt Angle was there in TNA for 10 years, from 2006 to 2016. That is 10 years worth of Impact and TNA deep dives when Impact was at the height of its popularity in sort of 2008, 2007 time. That's fascinating as well. So we've got so many Kurt Angle stories coming out of that. As I mentioned, the guy was in New Japan for a brief period. He was the IWGP Heavyweight Champion in the whole Impact New Japan crossover. That's fascinating as well. So you've got that. Plus, the guy nearly fought for the UFC on a couple of occasions. I'd love for them to do an episode when they do a deep dive into those UFC negotiations, talking to Dana White. All of that stuff is absolutely fascinating. So I'm really excited, and that's my Sunday sorted. I'll be listening to that every single Sunday, and I hope you are too. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of the news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.